Hello YouTube! We know many things about the Elder Scrolls universe, from the love and marriage customs of each of the races and cultures, to how people on Tamriel go to the toilet. Now, today we're delving into something completely different, specifically what do the people of Tamriel consider attractive in a person's physical appearance. We will go over each of the major races and see what exactly makes their heads turn when they see someone walking by. So, strap in for a superficial ride of Tamrielic beauty standards. So first of all, I want to make clear that what is considered beautiful is really a subjective, personal thing. Now, for example, we have NPCs in the games which really don't adhere to the beauty standards for their cultures, and yet their partner or the person crushing on them is absolutely smitten by their looks. So don't think of this video as how your character needs to look to be attractive, as that's a whole different discussion. Rather, think of this video as a general discussion on what kind of physical attributes are appreciated or are considered beautiful, handsome, sexy by the mainstream masses of a certain culture. Alright, that being said, something which we can basically say about all the races is that in their culture the attributes of a healthy and clean body seem to be generally appreciated. For example, people with disease-ridden skin, for example corpus disease marks on one's skin, are regarded as less attractive than those with a clean, even skin tone. From some NPC dialogue we can also discern that while weight is not really something the people on Tamriel care about, either too thin or too fat people do seem to be considered less attractive by the masses. And finally, something that I can say about all the races with some certainty is that clean teeth also seem to be appreciated in almost every culture, as most cultures seem to have some popular objects to clean your teeth with. But that is about all that I can say about the general population of Tamriel, as each culture seems to have their own standards to a degree. Now, we don't know as much about each of the races as I would personally have liked. For example, most human races we know very little concrete information about, while with the elves and the beast races we generally have a bit more. So let's start with the human races. While most human races seem to appreciate a healthy looking person, the exact specifications of what's considered to be healthy can vary. For example, we know that in Nordic culture being a sturdy and strong person is considered very attractive. Both men and women with tall, muscled physique tend to be regarded as attractive, while slim and short people are considered to be less so. For both men and women, long hair seems to be the preference, with both men and women braiding their hair, but especially women. Now, beards are considered almost a must for a man in Nordic culture, as they add to the sturdy and strong image. And generally the Nords seem to prefer the people to be more natural in terms of their bodies and don't really care about stuff like body hair. For example, ear and nose hair seem to be somewhat appreciated by the Nords, as it adds to the sturdiness and naturalness, like with beards. Now, the Bretons and the Imperial seem to be the complete opposite of that, seemingly preferring women to be shorter and less muscled. A muscled physique for men does seem to be appreciated, but not in the same way as the Nords. I mean, height doesn't really seem to matter as much, and personal grooming is an absolute must, especially with the Bretons. I mean, nose hair is just a no-go, it seems, and if you must have a beard, then Imperials and Bretons appreciate regular trimming and cleaning. Many Imperial and Breton NPCs also seem to consider dark hair to be a bit more attractive than blonde hair, while the Nords don't really seem to care about your hair color. Now, a final thing about the Imperials specifically is that in women they do seem to appreciate a slim physique and long hair, as the statues and depictions of the beauty ideal, the goddess of beauty and sexual attraction, the Bella, in those statues she is always portrayed as having a slim figure and long hair, and the depictions of her that we see are almost always the Imperial depictions of the goddess, so that's why I say it. Now, for the Redguards, their goddess of beauty and fertility, Morwa, is usually depicted with large breasts, and considering the focus on her bosom in her worship, there's a good chance that in Redguard culture larger breasts are considered to be more beautiful. Although we don't have any lore which explicitly states it to be so, just like with the Debella statue conclusion with the Imperials. Now, what we do know for sure is that the Redguards actually put a bigger emphasis on hairstyling than the other cultures, for both men and women. Elaborate hair braids and dreadlocks are deeply ingrained in the culture and are considered quite attractive, regardless of their hair length. They, just like the Bretons and the Imperials, also seem to appreciate personal grooming. For example, untrimmed nails are considered quite unattractive, and beards also need to be trimmed regularly. Now, one other thing I found is that rather than black eyeshadow, Redguard women with bronzish eyeshadow seem to be considered more attractive than those with black or blue or any other color of eyeshadow. Alright, next up, let's talk about the orcs. We know very little about the orcs, other than that we know that they really appreciate tusk grooming. So, clean tusks which have been sharpened and even shined. Now, there are multiple brands of tusk shine that we can find in the Elder Scrolls Online's contraband, and by far the funniest one is called Uncle Brooks Tusk Shine. But it's far from the only one, like there are multiple. But other than that, just like the Nords, they seem to appreciate a sturdy physique most of the time, with muscles for both men and women being somewhat of an ideal. But other than that, and just the groomed tusks, we really just don't know anything about the orcs. Now, a culture that we also don't know that much about are the Bosmer. We know exactly three things, at least from what I could find. They find sharp and pointy teeth very attractive, so more animal-like teeth. They tend to find tiger and cat-like eyeshadow very attractive, and they also really like horns. It's a bit unclear how Bosmer horns work. Some sources claim they are all cosmetic additions made from creatures that the Bosmer hunted or magically grown to make them more bestial, while other sources claim that some Bosmer are actually born with horns, so we don't really know how that works. But regardless of how it works, fake horns or not fake horns, Bosmer really find horns to be very attractive. And concluding on this, I think it can straight up be said that the Bosmer tend to appreciate a more bestial form. But other than that, we don't really know all that much. But I suppose that just like the Nords, they most likely enjoy someone's body to be more natural rather than very cosmetic, since they are going for the whole bestial thing. Alright, so next up are the Dark Elves, or the Dunmer. We know a bit more about them. For example, it seems that smooth skin is considered more attractive than the uneven skin that some Dark Elves are born with. They seem to be the only race to actively make skin cream for smooth skin, which is actually pretty interesting. And personal grooming is an absolute must. Body hair seems to be looked down upon very much. Nails need to be trimmed. Beards, if you must have them, need to be regularly maintained. And they're also one of the primary users of lip paint, so essentially lipstick. It also seems that natural red hair among the Dunmer seems to be considered more attractive than dark or either white hair. Now, if you were somewhat disappointed so far about the amount of lore that we have, let me assure you that the final three races either have more lore to them or have quite interesting lore when it comes to beauty standards. So first let's finish up talking about the Elven races with the Altmer, or the High Elves. Traditionally, Altmer are extremely superficial and really care about looks, and more specifically how elvish one looks. More human qualities in outward appearance are deemed less attractive, and in very conservative Altmer circles, just having some human genes from a far-off human ancestor is already problematic. One of the greatest qualities to have for traditional Altmer is very sharp ears, because sharper ears signify less human ancestors. But not just that, I mean, sharp facial features are considered attractive because humans tend to have more rounded faces. Height is also one of these features. High elves tend to be taller than humans, thus the taller one is, the more attractive that they are considered to be. And finally, more yellowish golden skin is also considered to be the most attractive, as human ancestors calls for either lighter or darker skin, which is considered less attractive in most conservative Altmer circles. But it's not just important not to have human qualities. Symmetry of the face is also very important to many, as is symmetrical bone structure, the right width between the eyes, nose not being too big, not too large. In general, very average facial features seem to be important, and almond is considered to be the very best eye color, as green, blue, brown, etc. are all considered to be the result of human or other racial ancestors. And beards with the High Elves are generally a no-go in conservative circles, save for extremely well-kept short beards or moustaches for older men. Basically anything dirty or considered brutish is considered to be too human-like and thus not really considered attractive. Because of these really superficial standards, far stricter than any other race or culture, face sculpting magic and face sculptors using it are actually quite common in the Somerset Isles, as people will use magic to adhere to the beauty standards. Now, it's important to note here that we know that these things come from very conservative Altmer circles. It's likely that most not too conservative Altmer appreciate some of these qualities, sure, but don't really adhere to them very strictly and may find other things attractive as well. We don't really know how much of the high elf population at this point is still that conservative, but it's a section of the population that we just know most about. So be sure to take these standards with a bit of a grain of salt, as in less conservative Altmer circles it's definitely not that strict most likely. That being said, the final two races that we do need to talk about are the beast races, and let's start with the Khajiit. Interestingly enough, since there are so many types of Khajiit, or fur stocks as they call it themselves, a video on that is in the description if you haven't seen it, it seems that there aren't really any body types or fur patterns which are considered especially attractive in Khajiiti culture, likely because there are so many different ones. That being said, there are a few universal rules for Khajiiti attractiveness, it seems to be, some of which I personally find to be pretty hilarious. A great example is of how straight and unbroken whiskers are one of the sexiest things for a Khajiit apparently. Khajiit take this very seriously, I mean very seriously. Some of them even use little clips to bind their whiskers to bamboo twigs while they sleep, so their whiskers don't wrinkle in their sleep. Good stuff. Other than that, they have a saying, claws make the cat, meaning that their claws need to be polished, neatly trimmed and sharp to boot. Now, the Khajiit ideal is smooth and unknitted fur, which appears sleek and shiny to the eye. Because of this, there are many fur products to make their fur shine and fur brushes to untangle knits in the fur, as knitted fur seems to be a signal of being untidy and slobbish. Now, a final thing to note about Khajiiti beauty standards is that green eyes are apparently considered to be especially attractive, as they are quite rare. Now, finally, we have the Argonians, who are an interesting case, as one of the things that the Argonians seem to appreciate is a strong smell. While the other races have all kinds of perfumes to mask any smells, Argonians seem to find it attractive in some cases, which is interesting. Now, something else which the Argonians really appreciate are sharp and shiny horns on their head. We have some items which suggest that they both regularly sharpen and wax their horns, but in terms of wax it's not just their horns, because they apparently also wax their scales, as clean and shiny scales are considered to be very attractive to many Argonians. And one funny little tidbit is that some of the chemicals that they use to clean their scales can actually burn the skin of other races or cause extreme rashes, so yeah, do with that knowledge what you want. Now, unlike most other races, smooth skin is actually not that attractive, as skin ridges and wrinkles are considered to be very nice to look at in Argonian society. Now, having talked about all the races, I have to admit that this is not a full picture, but it's basically everything we know in terms of confirmed lore, at least what I could find after 30 hours of research on the log. I mean, what I found is not that much, but it's quite interesting nonetheless, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed learning about it, as this is just all there is, seemingly. This video actually started out as a Patreon request for me to find Tamriel's most attractive man or woman in history. I didn't really find much, except for the very short story of Maka of the Piercing Eyes, who was a female harbinger of Skyrim's companions, who was apparently so beautiful that everybody underestimated her because of it, but who was allegedly able to slay an army single-handedly. But that's not really something I could make a video on, since that literally is all that we know. I'm not exaggerating here. Like, there's maybe one extra sentence, but that's it on her, so yeah. Couldn't really make anything on that. So I started wondering, what is beauty, and when do the people of Tamriel consider someone to be so beautiful? And that's what led me here. Anyway, I sincerely hope that I was able to teach you something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today, and if you did learn something new, maybe consider subscribing and returning for the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Now, all that remains me to do now is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polaris Putin, Athena Iodis, Volcure of Argonia, King Chris, Bulge, Scrap of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Rakai, Zarmikal, and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I'm very grateful. That said, I hope to see all of you in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.